Oh, this sucks. This sucks. Whose bright idea was this? I hope he didn't stake his entire identity on his invention being liked.
Were you using steak puns from earlier episodes? Gosh, you really are lost without John and Austin.
No, the joke is that he did put his identity in... Fine, whatever. Something that I've more recently come to understand is that stories are arguments. They involve a cast of characters playing out the benefits and consequences of various worldviews. Throughout the story, the character either dies, doubling down on who they've always been, or they change into what the author believes is a greater ideal. And the claims stories are making are not inconsequential. Storytellers are trying to discover and argue ways to live that are better than others. And as stated in the intro video, that has huge implications. In the next 3 videos, we're going to be looking at one of my favorite films, not only to see what's so impactful about it, but to see if I agree with its claim in order to better inform how I act. So let's see what we find.
So here's the cheese. You can keep it going, get everything you've ever wanted, and be the great man I know you can be. Or you can turn it off, ruin everything, and no one will ever like you. It's your choice.
Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs wrestles with the question of what makes someone great. The two sides of the argument are, someone is great because everyone says so, or someone is great because regardless of approval, they always seek out truth and try to do its best for everyone. Sam and Flint are the characters that make the movie's claim. Manny and Tim serve as examples of characters who do what they think is right. And lastly, and who we'll be focusing on in this episode, Brent and the mayor serve as the logical conclusion for seeking greatness through others' acceptance. But as in any argument, let's first cover some foundational motivations. What is the core ideal stated in the movie?
Have you ever felt like you were a little bit different? Like you had something unique to offer the world, then you know exactly how it felt to be me.
Here, we see that Flint feels like he has something unique to offer the world. The movie assumes, 1, that this is a sympathetic feeling, that your answer to this rhetorical question is, yeah, I have felt that. And 2, the movie assumes that offering something unique to the world is worthwhile for humans to do. Well, great. That all sounds nice and positive, but what does that even mean? Well, how does Flint offer something unique to the world?
What is the #1 problem facing our community today? Untied shoelaces, which is why I've invented a laceless alternative foot covering. Spray-on shoes!
By inventing, or broken down further, solving problems. Also called growth. Problem, the untied shoelace epidemic. What would be better for humanity? Spray-on shoes. Well, okay, but let's pause for a second though, because this is already a big claim that Chris and Phil are making. That the way anyone, you, me, that guy, can offer anything unique to the world is by benefiting humanity through new ideas and problem solving. Growing. And this obviously isn't just about inventing. You write a song because of the benefits of music. Or being there for someone who's stuck and needs encouragement to imagine a better life. Do that which brings forth benefit. This is the ideal of the movie. Which is profound if you stop and think about it. Should that be a goal of our lives? And what is considered positive benefit? Based on what standard? Towards what goal? In Flint's sight, the people who did it were the scientists and inventors who made drastic changes in the way we think, understand, and communicate. They solved huge problems and significantly grew how we understand this whole reality thing. But being an acclaimed inventor is not what the movie's about. Immediately after Flint shows us his solution for the biggest problem facing his community today, we see what Flint and we must overcome in order to meet the movie's stated ideal of offering something unique to the world.
How are you gonna get him off, nerd?
While Brent's motives are obviously skewed, he makes a good point. How are you going to get them off? It's in Flint's reaction that we see he actually cares more about being accepted than solving the problem. The goal of an inventor is to make things better. But if Flint's only goal was to solve the untied shoelace epidemic, then Brent's feedback would be divorced from impacting Flint's perceived self-value. The situation would play out, how you gonna get him off, nerd?
Huh, yeah, no, that's a pretty good point. I'll have to think about that one and keep iterating until I solve the problem.
But that's not what we get.
I wanted to run away that day. but you can't run away from your own feet.
His shoes are now a constant reminder of who he and others believe he is, a failed inventor. This is what he has to overcome in order to become a great inventor. He has to surpass deriving his value from the acceptance of others and divorce it from the success of his inventions. What's great is even at the beginning here, the resolution is offered to Flint plainly by his mom.
Everyone just thinks I'm a weirdo.
So,
Your value doesn't come from what other people think.
the world needs your originality, Flint.
You have something unique to offer the world. Do what is right for everyone, regardless if people validate you for it. Which is a profound thing to say. In terms of survival, this makes sense. The growth of human consciousness involves dying to old ideas and accepting more beneficial ones. If we do and think only what our perceived culture accepts, how can we grow? So, for the sake of humanity, we can't put our value in the views of humanity. But what happens when we do? To answer that, let's look at Brent the Mayor. Brent's entire identity is staked in being famous. People know him,
Hey, it's Baby Brent.
accept him, and want him to do things merely on the pretense that everybody knows him.
Featuring a live appearance by Baby Brent himself.
I'll be using these bad boys to help save the town.
In his sight, he has purpose and value because everyone likes him.
I'm the best person in the whole town.
But why did people give him that status? It's not like his role as the face of Baby Brent Sardines pushed humanity forward. He became a celebrity because he was a common talking point, which is so weird and upsets me when I think about how that plays out in our culture. Think about it. Celebrity at some point is this weird circular logic where they're famous because we talk about them, but we talk about them because they're famous. It's like, why do we talk about people who are just merely famous? I'm not here to fully explore that today, it's just frustrating. The point is, Brent's value is in his celebrity, and throughout the film we see Flint begin to replace him as the new household name. This begins to pull the rug out from underneath Brent until his breaking point.
Uh-oh! Put your clothes back on! Who am I?
So there you go. You put your identity in others' opinions and eventually it'll lead to an identity crisis. Brent's character postulates that value from people is not a good long-term strategy because people are fickle, short-sighted, self-interested, and in and of themselves incapable of providing ultimate value. We are incredibly limited in scope and in years of life. How am I capable of offering ultimate value?
Like, it's obviously valuable to me that you guys express your appreciation for the time that I put into these analyses. But if I put my core value as a human into whether or not you guys show up, what happens if you don't? What if we continue this whole creator relationship thing until when we start dying? Who can I rest my value on then? Well, as we see in this scene, if I put my value on you and you stop watching, then my entire identity structure would collapse. And interesting evidence to pay attention to is how funny this scene is. Why is it so funny? It's funny because it's true. We unconsciously knew that his identity was precariously placed. It wouldn't be funny if his reaction here didn't make any sense. Say they made him a school teacher who loved to brighten the youth of tomorrow. And in most of his scenes, they show him saying hi to his students and talking about lesson plans. And then, yeah, he admits to someone that, sure, he was Baby Brent when he was younger, but that was a long time ago. And then this scene plays out. It wouldn't be funny, it'd be confusing. Because his actions throughout the film would have showed us that he had a greater mission than being Baby Brent. So, pay attention to that. If we know deep down that putting our identity into the acceptance of others is precarious, we need to consider that in choosing how and why we act.
But Brent changes. His change is a clone of Flint's change. And while Chicken Brent is a curious conclusion to land on, who he is now is defined by,
And I'm finally contributing to society.
This aligns with the stated ideal that we should offer something unique to the world by acting for the benefit of humanity. And while Brent's change supports the claim of the movie, the mayor demonstrates the ending result of what happens when we derive our value from others. An interesting side point is that the mayor is older than Brent. I think the writers are playing off of the cliche that older individuals are more likely to double down on whatever they've decided life is about. Whereas like Brent, younger individuals are generally more likely to consider that they don't have it all figured out and then change accordingly. I personally wonder if it's because the stakes are higher the older we get. If I've committed 30 years to a worldview, admitting I was wrong that entire time is significantly weightier than if I've only committed 5, thus requiring less humility in order to accept the misstep. I can understand if it's a long tradition that extends past you. Are you disrespecting your father's father or your mother's mother if you've concluded that they've been wrong for hundreds of years? Regardless of how he came to this conclusion, the mayor is convinced he knows what life is about.
I want to be big. I want people to look at me and say, that is one big mayor. That's why this has to work. It has to work. Otherwise, I'm just a tiny mayor of a tiny town full of tiny sardine-sucking knuckle scrapers.
He believes this so much so that people are not humans anymore. They're objects to him, either tools to facilitate a position or points on his score of acceptance. And we see this play out. He has no clue or concern into the consequences that his actions have on people.
That's why, without consulting anyone, I spent the entire town budget on the thing that is under this tarp. I have taken out a very high-interest loan.
Oh, what are you doing here?
I've been up here ordering dinner for the last 10 minutes. Why? Is something going on?
I've got to stop the machine. Everyone's in danger because of me.
Oh, it can't be that bad.
Well,
I'm out of here.
This can also be read into why he eats. The food whether is the tool by which he will gain mass acceptance. So he makes what will bring him success a part of himself. Everything that he does is subordinate to this goal of being praised. And what we see as a result of this level of myopia is a morbidly obese man who puts an entire community at risk of destruction and ultimately destroys himself. This is the extreme danger of deriving one's value from the acceptance of others. Notice how the mayor has no intimate relationships. All of his relationships are transactional in nature, even using intimacy to manipulate people for his own goal.
Oh, not you, Brent. No, you've always been like a son to me. I've always felt that you were like a son to me, Flint.
When I need others' acceptance to give me value, I no longer see anyone else as a person of intrinsic value, and therefore I become incapable of vulnerability and intimacy. And if you take that far enough, no one else matters but you. Either they help you, or they're just in your way. So that concludes the next video. In 2 weeks, we'll be talking about Tim and Manny. This is Kaylee. This is Griffin.
This is the first YouTube video I've ever been in.
That's special.
I kind of don't know what to do with my hands.
That's the ever problem.
Adam
What to do
does
with
this
that?
all the time and enunciates with his hands every single syllable.
Let us know what you guys think in the comments, or join us on Discord for more in-depth conversation. If you guys find this valuable, please help me on Patreon. This is my only income right now, so anything helps. This video is produced by Connor Fitzer, Miley Greenwell, Caitlin Taylor, and Matt Laskowski. And a segment I want to add to Critical Hit is pointing out other channels and videos and blogs that I think are dope or really impacted me in a certain way. So first and foremost, if you guys remember John, my best friend, one of the 3 original guys of Critical Hit, he actually just started a channel of his own called How to Be Human, where he's going to be exploring interpersonal relationships and how to treat each other and just trying to figure out what life is about, kind of like here. I don't know how in-depth he's going to go in with stories. This first one, he does talk about Moana a bit. But yeah, go check it out. Tell him what you think. Give him feedback. I love feedback. Give everybody feedback. That's... And then the other thing, I think this is the intro to life. I think everybody should watch this series. It's a podcast put on by a belief agency with one of my favorite story teachers, Brian McDonald. Me and 2 of my close friends listened through this series often. Even as I was doing like effects and stuff for this video, I was constantly just going through this podcast again. So I highly recommend it. And the last thing is I'm going to switch to an every 3-week schedule. My initial goal is every 2 weeks. That's very difficult in practice based on everything that I'm trying to do. It may go back to 2 weeks once I'm more comfortable with everything, but right now I haven't gotten sleep in a while. So we're going to try every 3 weeks for a bit, see if that is a little more reasonable. Cool. You guys have a great couple weeks. Bye.